Welcome to another edition of Carnivore Bites. I'm your host, Jeff Sherman, along with Dr. Eric E. Lopkin. And we talked about the Hindenburg, 2 weeks ago before the July 4th break. And that crash and burn probably lasted maybe a minute. This is a extended crash and burn of Uncle Joe in real time, isn't it?
It really is. But you know what? It's more than just the crash and burn of Joe Biden. Because not only have people seen, well, he's clearly not capable of doing the job, but they're not stupid enough to think this just happened. So now they're looking at the entire Democratic Party, the entirety of legacy media, and going, how long did you know this? And how hard have you been trying to cover this up? This is a massive loss of credibility, not just for Joe Biden, but for the Democratic Party and for the legacy media.
100% Dr. Eric E. Lopkin. It's when did you know and when did you know it, right? Like back in the Watergate days, okay? It is, Uncle Joe's fine. And you know something, for us, because we're kind of political junkies, we got the podcast, we had legacy media, radio in the past until we got booted. Anyway, that's another story. But the average American believed it. Of course they believed it, right? And then, they have lives, right? So they watched the debate and they said, what the F is going on here? So completely blew legacy media, all the political Democratic apparatchik blown out of the water. And even George Clooney, who I think he's a meathead, but I don't really give a shit. So he said, oh, yes, Uncle Joe was that way. That was before, pre-debate at that fundraiser. He was that way before the debate. To the whole thing you're talking about losing credibility, then why did it take you 3 weeks to say something, Georgie?
Well, more than why did it take him 3 weeks? If he knew this in advance, why did he host the fundraiser? He cares so little about the American people and the country that he wants to prop up an infirm old man who is incapable of doing the job. And by the way, you mentioned, Watergate with what did he know and when did he know it? Carl Bernstein has come out and said this scandal is bigger than Watergate.
I believe it truly is, because it involves our entire government and media complex. I think it blew up in there. Well, I don't think. I know it blew up. Obviously, it blew up. But they thought they could drag Uncle Joe to the finish line, replace him with Kamala or one of their other operatives, right? Kamala, probably, obviously. But they never expected the flame out that happened 2 weeks ago. That's when the emperor had no clothes. And to the Clooney thing, he expects us to believe. You talk about how he had the fundraiser. No, his BS line, by the way, to cover his ass, was that he discovered that at the fundraiser. And if you believe that, I have a bridge to sell you in Baltimore.
Yeah, to give you an idea of how long people have known this for. Okay, now, first of all, we've been talking about it since 2019. That was when I was first told that Biden had dementia by members of the Democratic State Committee of Florida. But it is just over the past few days, it has come out that in 2022, the German chancellor scheduled a meeting with President Biden, knowing that he could not do things later in the day. So they scheduled it for early evening so that Biden would be okay at the meeting, and Biden did not show up. Anthony Blinken showed up in his place. They did not tell the German chancellor ahead of time that this was going to happen, and Blinken told the chancellor Biden had to go to bed.
Yes, and I love Peter Ducey to that point, Dr. Eric A. Lopkin. I love the Ducey's question in yesterday's press conference. Like, if and he was sarcastic, if Uncle Joe gets the call at like 11 o'clock, who answers it? And does Jill answer it? It's just, I've never seen, again, I have been around the block and back. I've never seen it. Have you ever seen anything that remotely resembles this?
No, I never thought he was going to self-destruct this badly. And more than just his public self-destruction. Now you've got the Democratic Party in a major split between supporting him and not supporting him. One congressperson left the congressional meeting yesterday. A reporter asked him, "Are the Democrats on the same page?" And he said, "The same page? We're not even on the same book."
I saw that. Yes, absolutely. What do you think about this, Dr. Eric E. Lopkin? We talked a little bit about this, in prep for this podcast. He has a big boy press conference tomorrow. Okay. Assuming he does it, I truly believe that might be his crescendo, the end of the end of Uncle Joe. Because he couldn't even get through basically the labor meeting, which was like 5 minutes of him talking. You tell me, you're the doctor. How does he get through a so-called big boy press con? That could be the end of the end.
Yeah, I don't know how he's going to get through the press conference, but I don't think it's going to be the end. At this point, there is nothing that the Democrats can do to get him off the ticket, short of using the 25th Amendment to remove him from office. Now, the cabinet members, which is where the 25th Amendment would have to start, have already said they're not even considering this. Biden is dead set on running. And now, let's be fair, in his own defense, when you are suffering from dementia, it is obvious to everybody else, but you don't know it. So he thinks.
But Dr. Jill knows it.
Dr. Jill knows it, but she doesn't care. She does not want to leave the White House. And that goes back to the Democrats' argument against Trump that, once he gets power, he's not going to want to give it up. Excuse me, that's exactly what Jill Biden is doing. Everything.
Well, isn't it a bigger issue, though? Oh, wait, hold on. A bigger issue. Don't the Democrats, I dated a psychologist once, and she always talked about projecting. They're the ultimate projectors. What they say is actually what they do.
Yes, everything they have accused Donald Trump of doing or potentially doing are things that they are actually doing. And the party is now falling apart, not simply because of Joe Biden. Joe's condition is a big part of it. But the American public are now seeing, wait a minute, you've been telling us that Donald Trump is a threat to democracy. So much that you're propping up Joe Biden, who can't do the job. And now, right now, you've got Senate Democrats and House members who are in swing states, who are in danger of losing their seats. Now suddenly they're blowing the whistle. Now they're saying, Biden can't run. Why? Not because they care about Joe Biden, but because suddenly their seats are in danger, because according to the most recent polls, Biden is not just going to lose to Trump, he is going to pull down the entire ticket.
Oh, it is going to be Reagan-esque. How do you like that? That was like, how would you call it? That was just like discussions three months ago, in more conservative media. I would say more wishful thinking than reality-based. Maybe a mixture of both. Now it's real. You even talked about, you have Mark Levin, right, from New York.
Yes, Mark Levin is the Manhattan Borough president in New York City, lifelong Democrat. And he told Politico magazine in an interview that at this point, New York is a battleground state and it may flip red. Did you
Well, speaking of battleground
think
states, you
at
look at
any
New Jersey too.
yeah, did you think at any time in the past 20 years that New York would flip red?
0.0. Maybe the last time it did was Reagan, and that's like ancient history 40 years ago.
Well, no, the last time it flipped red was actually
George W. Bush.
Was in the 90s when New York City elected Rudy Giuliani and the state elected George Pataki, who was a Republican governor.
I'm talking about presidential elections.
Oh, presidential. They haven't gone Republican in the presidential since Reagan.
Yep. So yes, and then you know, I spoke over you. I apologize, but New Jersey is now +1 Trump. I mean, you have to defend existing territory to look at it from a military strategy. You're asked. You're supposed to. That's land you've already won.
Yeah,
that's not good. That's not good.
I'm forgetting the organization. There's an organization that actually puts together composites of the polls and labels the states as leaning red, leaning blue, toss up, deep. You know, they just shifted virtually every state, all of the battleground states. Those that were toss ups are now leaning red. Those that were solidly blue are now leaning blue. The Democrats have lost so much ground thanks to Joe Biden, and he's not making it easier for them because he keeps going out. And, you know, the Democrats' big talking point is, oh, you know, Trump told so many lies during the debate. Guess what? Biden told just as many, and Biden is continually lying. The Washington Post today came out attacking Joe Biden's speech in front of NATO because at the speech, he claimed he was responsible for the increase in countries spending on NATO. And the Washington Post came out and said, no, Donald Trump was responsible for that, not Joe Biden. In fact, 80% of the increase can be linked directly to Donald Trump.
No question. And to the debate about the lies, I think that's a narrative that's based on BS, okay? Is Trump the ultimate truth seeker? No. But he basically didn't talk that much enough to lie. I didn't think he lied. I'm serious.
No,
I think he was just watching Uncle Joe implode. I don't think if you look at it, he probably talked like 15 minutes for the whole friggin' debate.
No, he did talk more than that. And I'm kidding. But the big difference between what the Democrats are yelling about Trump's lies and the Democratic and Biden lies are that when Biden tells a lie, when the Democrats tell a lie, it is definitively a lie. Trump's lies tend to be hyperbole. They tend to be exaggerations.
Yes.
It's, there's
the biggest crowd, the
right.
best, but it's
exactly.
not. No. Yeah, Biden's is absolutely fact-based lies, and he's always talked about this for a billion years. He's been that way 40 years ago. You talked about it, and I looked up the tapes from YouTube. Johnny Carson, back in 1988, was making jokes about Uncle Joe, and I lived in Philly back in 1988. And it's right next to Delaware. He was always a joke. No one ever took Uncle Joe seriously.
Well,
sorry to break it to people.
Just this week, in a campaign event in, I believe it was Philadelphia, it was definitely in Pennsylvania, he thanked the voters of Pennsylvania for putting him over the top when they elected him to Senate.
That was in Philadelphia.
Yeah, he never represented Pennsylvania in the Senate. He represented Delaware. He doesn't even know where he is anymore or what position he's running for.
I would agree with that, and that we don't want to overdo something, but I already talked about the big boy press conference. I do say that yes, will he resign? That's an open question. I got it. But you talk about the knives coming out now. It's going to be a bloodbath after that big boy press conference, and even had Nancy Pelosi saying, "Wait for to the end of the NATO conference before you pull the plug on it." So it's going to be. I don't know if it's sustainable. That's good fodder for our show for next week, but it's going to be 24/7, and every day it goes on, Trump gets stronger.
Yeah, all Trump has to do is act like an adult. That's pretty much it. As long as he doesn't shoot himself in the foot, Biden keeps killing himself over these things. He keeps making these gaffes. And Nancy Pelosi made a statement earlier, basically saying, well, whatever Joe decides, we have to back him. And she told Democrats, if you have a complaint, talk about it behind closed doors. Essentially, she's trying to tell the Democrats, look, shut up, you're killing us. And the fact of the matter is, there was a campaign strategist. I don't remember who it was, but in an interview on Fox News, he said at this point, all Donald Trump has to do is run campaign commercials that are clips of all of the Democrats and the liberal media saying Biden is not capable of being president. He doesn't have 100%. To do anything else.
Nope, 100%. Even the clip of George Stephanopoulos, that off-the-cuff remark that he's unsafe. I mean, that's all you have to do. I again, we'll see what happens. And you were talking about, or celebrities, certain celebrities Michael Douglas, that said that on The View, another genius show, Genius on Genius. But he basically said the Democrats have a huge bench. You know that Uncle Joe polls the strongest against Trump, including Kamala, who yesterday was lamenting about the Palestinian protesters and how saying that taps into true American emotions. A Mensa candidate.
Yeah, and in fact, that is one of the reasons that it is looking like New York State may turn red, because the Democrats are losing the Jewish vote in massive numbers, because Jews do not feel safe in New York City anymore because of these protests. So we've already, over the past weeks, we've seen in the polls, and we've talked about this a lot, that the Democrats are losing African-American males. They're losing the Hispanic vote. Now they're losing the Jewish vote. Guess what? Basically, and they're also losing white males. So all this leaves for the Democratic Party is the awfuls. And for our listeners who have not heard that acronym before, awful is affluent white liberal female. Or excuse me, affluent white female liberal.
You know what's really interesting? When we do this podcast, I peruse different sites to see if there's anything else that popped up. Really interesting. What do you think of this? This is not a conservative site, basically talking about the gray wave, meaning older people flipping tradition. And as you were saying, Dr. Eric E. Lotkin, about New York, when you were talking, the thing that came up right before that was New York, next swing state. Yikes.
Yeah, exactly. And I hadn't thought about this before, but as I was saying what awful stands for, it just dawned on me that the stereotypical Democrat right now, based on the definition of the affluent white female liberal, that seems to be the strong point, they're kowtowing the entire party to Jill Biden.
I would say you're 100%
Yeah.
right. I mean, but isn't it funny though? At the big reboot, which is the 2 weeks after the disaster from hell, which was a debate, Uncle Joe went on Scarborough for the big reboot, and basically it was so funny. I'm sure you saw it. You had the two of them. There was a moment when they both looked at each other and knew this is over. And the hysterical part of that is that Joe Biden, who basically wouldn't be where he was or is unless the liberal elites of Hollywood and in finance and in entertainment didn't push him and fund him, we're now blaming the elites.
Yes.
You can't make that up.
Yes.
And you know what the funny, before you comment on it, the funny thing about it also, he says, but not you guys. You don't qualify. You're too friggin' stupid. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, when
awesome.
When Joe Biden started blaming the elites, that was the biggest mistake he could have made at that point, because the elites, as he called them, are the only ones propping him up. He's lost everybody else. So the idea that the elites are the ones making this worse, and again, as I said earlier, it goes back to more evidence that, yes, he has dementia. He does not realize what is going on. He has this image in his mind, and nobody is telling him that it's wrong. His inner circle is basically a bunch of yes men telling him, yes, you're right.
And a crackhead.
Yes. Well, I was about to say, Jill Biden does not want to want to lose the White House. She wants to be able to keep traveling on the taxpayer dime and showing up on the cover of Vogue, which, let's face it,
with a $3,000 dress.
Right. Let's face it. If Biden loses, Jill Biden's never going to be on another magazine cover for her, in her life. And you've got Hunter Biden that certainly doesn't want Joe leaving the White House, because that's basically all that's standing between him and his freedom. You know, because he could be going to jail on the gun charge. And more than that, you have the entire Biden family who built an industry out of selling influence and access to Joe Biden. He leaves, he steps down, that's it. The industry is done.
Actually, I disagree with you on one thing. Jill will be on the cover of a magazine shortly after the election. I don't know if the magazine still exists. Bankruptcy Journal. Because the gravy train is over. I think they've tried to refinance their houses too. So yeah, that might be the only one.
That could be. And you brought up money, which is another major factor in this, because but the Biden-Harris campaign, prior to the debate, or prior to maybe a month before the debate, was a fundraising juggernaut. Mm-hmm. The debate killed that. They've still got these big donors who are sticking by them, but most of their donors are now leaving. That money cannot be turned over to any other candidate other than Kamala Harris, because it is the Biden-Harris campaign. So if they do want to replace Joe Biden, unless they replace him with Kamala Harris, who at this point has just as low, I don't know if it's lower anymore since the debate, but her approval rating is just as low as Joe's. All of that money goes away. Can I interject one thing on that?
Like I said before, though, she has not given full, so it's really low now. Give her 1 month, it could be sub-zero. How do you like that?
Well, I mean, it's absolutely amazing. There's a clip. I don't know who put the clip together, but I've seen it distributed on social media. It is a montage of reporters asking her questions and her cackling as the answers. Well, guess what? You can't do that in a press conference and expect to maintain credibility. One of the biggest things, and we'll get to more details on this in a little bit, but one of the things that the GOP just put in their new platform, in fact, I believe it's number one on the platform, is secure the border. Yes, number one is seal the border and stop the migrant invasion. Well, guess who the border czar is? It's Kamala Harris. So
whoa! She's still looking she's still looking for the root causes.
Yes, she's looking for the root causes. Yes, she's looked
Genius.
She's looked under the bed. She's looked in the closet. She can't find the root causes.
No, but she is the AI czar too. You can never think of anyone more qualified and more, because a brilliant mind that can understand the nuances and the technology of AI.
Yeah, you know what?
I would trust her.
Before she deals with artificial intelligence, she's got to deal with natural stupidity.
There you go. So yeah, that's not looking too good. But I will say, we talk about the destruction of the legacy media. It couldn't happen to a nicer group of people. I did mention that CNN just laid off 100 people and redirecting some of their efforts. Please comment on the fact that you had an African American. He went on 2 African American radio stations in Philly. He was smart enough to say, to avoid "you're not black," but one of the hosts leaked the situation that she was given questions beforehand. She was rudimentally fired immediately after that. But I'm sure that wasn't the first time, boy genius. Surprise, surprise, as Gomer Pyle would say.
I'm actually going to defend Biden's press office with this, because when I started my career, I was in public relations, and it is actually very common when you are arranging for an interview to provide questions or suggested questions. It is unheard of for a reporter to say, okay, yes, we'll just ask those questions. That is absolutely
and you don't think
unheard
that's been going on for the last 4 years?
That is exactly what is coming out now. You actually had a number of liberal correspondents in the White House press corps come out over the past 10 days or so and said, well, yes, we've seen this for years. We've seen this happening. But we didn't want to report on it because we didn't want to add fuel to the right-wing talking point. So, I mean, these are reporters. Yeah, these are reporters who have basically said, so we don't care about the truth. We don't care about the Fifth Estate. We don't care about the American people. We are pushing our agenda, which is the liberal agenda. And now all of that is coming out. Media had a bad enough credibility problem before this. Now, I don't know who anybody's going to believe.
Is it recoverable, Dr. Eric E. Lopkin? Is it recoverable? Everything's recoverable, but not
everything's recoverable, but it's going to take time. And you know what? I am actually going to give kudos. Again, I said this on the last podcast, to Dana Bash and Jake Tapper for the way they conducted themselves on the debate. They were fair. They were unbiased. They did their jobs as journalists. And immediately following the debate, liberal media started bashing them. How dare they not call out Trump for his lies? Well, they also didn't correct Biden's lies. Why? Because that's not the moderator's job.
Yes, I would agree on all that. Things seem to go. You never know. We are talking about Donald Trump, but things are really going well for the RNC. In fact, they've kind of taken away a major talking point, an issue point, maybe the only one left in the Democratic foil, and that is abortion. Explain that.
Yes. In the 2024 Republican platform, They have ended their opposition to abortion. They have said point blank, and Trump has actually said this for quite a while, but they are not going to push for a national ban or national limitations on abortion.
Brilliant.
They are following the Dobbs decision from the Supreme Court, which says this is a matter for the states. Now, here's the thing. This is why this is so important. This is, never mind a matter of politics. For political reasons, this is the best thing the GOP could have done. For legal reasons, though, Biden still keeps yelling they are going to push for a national law allowing abortions. Well, guess what? If the Democrats push for a national law allowing abortions across the board, if the Republicans pushed for a national law banning abortions across the board, the opposing side, if it was a Republican ban, it would be a blue state. If it's a Democratic pro-abortion law, it'll be a red state. They will take the law and the federal government to court. And once it gets to the Supreme Court, which it probably would, the Supreme Court, as a matter of law, will say, no, the Dobbs decision says the states have to make this decision, not the federal government. So it doesn't matter which party wants which. When it comes to abortion, the national party, Congress, the Senate, the president have no say on abortion. If abortion is a keystone principle for you, either way, you need to be voting in your local elections because that's where that decision is going to be made.
It certainly takes the thunder away from their biggest talking point. One thing I would like to ask you in conclusion, we talk about fallout. I'm really intrigued by this. One of the biggest, I'll say, fatalities or one of the biggest aftermaths of this whole debacle over the last 3 weeks has been Jill Biden. In fact, Bill O'Reilly wrote a piece basically, and he's not the first, basically articulating Jill Biden, what he calls spousal abuse. She's taken a lot of shit, and deservingly so, hasn't she?
Yes, she has, and she's going to take more. In fact, I was actually asked if there was any way the American voters could have her charged with elder abuse. And unfortunately, my answer was no, there isn't, because the American voter actually lacks standing to bring such a case. But yeah, pundits are saying she is guilty of elder abuse. She is pushing Joe to do things he is no longer mentally fit to do. And
100%.
What I find really amazing is, and I've heard a couple of actual liberal pundits talk about this, the person that Jill Biden is being compared to, and not favorably at all, is Nancy Reagan. Because we all know at the end of Reagan's term, he had started to suffer from dementia, and Nancy Reagan's main focus was protecting Ronald Reagan. When they left the Oval Office, she could have had a career of her own. She could have done book tours. She could have done speaking tours. No, she came off of all of that to care for Ronald Reagan. It is very clear that Jill Biden is not caring for Joe Biden. So she is turning out really the villain in this piece. But you know what? I'm
totally
actually
vilified.
She's being totally vilified. But I'm actually going to go out on a limb here. I think all of this is going to end up being a positive for the Democratic Party. We already started to see with the loss of Jamal Bowman, that the Democrats were starting to go, okay, you know what? We've let the left rule this for too long. We've started to see Omar facing an uphill battle in her primary.
AOC's been highly damaged.
AOC has been damaged, even though she won her primary. Cori Bush looks like she may lose her primary. If Biden's damage is so great that the Democrats actually do lose control of the Senate and cannot take the House, and I mean, even the Democrats themselves are saying it looks like we're losing the White House. This is the perfect opportunity for them to say, okay, you know what? It wasn't just that Joe Biden wasn't capable. This was an indictment of everything we had been doing as we kept moving to the left. We've heard comedians talk about this, but saying, you know, well, I didn't leave the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party left me. This is the perfect opportunity for the DNC and the leadership of the Democratic Party to go, all right, you know what? The people are telling us that this is not the party they want to vote for. Let's move more towards the center.
Well done, Dr. Eric E. Lotkin. I think that is going to be...
Yeah, this is the real reason that the Republicans left abortion out of their platform, because they were listening to the American voter, and the voter has been telling them, look, we do not want pro-life policies. We want reasonable abortion policies. And the Republicans went, look, the voters have spoken. We're going to leave that out. And the right wing of the party is not happy about it. But the main part of the Republican Party basically told the right wing, look, you're going out on a limb, you're going out on the fringe. We have to govern the entire country, not just the fringe. If the Democratic Party takes this opportunity to learn that same lesson and say, yes, we need to be a party that's going to govern the country, not just for the radical left, they are going to come out of this stronger than ever.
I like your commentary. I like your analysis. I believe it's 70-30, 70% what you just said, but it could go the other way, 30, and that will be the demise of the Democratic Party.
Yeah, if they decide, well, the voters didn't go to us because we didn't go far enough to the left,
enough.
then they'll be a fringe party, and they will be out of power probably for about 15 years until they fix that. And
100%.
Just from a political standpoint, I think there are people within the party that are smart enough to say, yeah, no, that would be a disaster. The question is, will they be overruled?
Interesting times, the best time ever to have a podcast. And our listeners, Dr. Lotkin, our increasing number of listeners, can comment on the show, what they like, what they don't like, and what they want us to talk more about, can't they?
Yes, they can. Go to the Carnivore Radio Facebook page, message us there. You can also go to xvadio.com/connect. Send us a message, let us know what you're thinking about. And of course, you can catch every episode of Carnivore Bites at xvadio.com, the Carnivore Radio website, the Apple Podcasts app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Amazon Music, and other platforms that respect freedom of speech.
Dr. Lotkin, you were on fire today, as always, and I will see you next week.
We'll see you then.